Well, good morning. Welcome back to Standards Plus History Academy. And today we're going to begin episode 6, which is sort of a continuation of episode 5. We were talking in episode 5 about a couple of the most obvious. We were trying to answer the question, was it just a bad day for the Secret Service? And we looked at just a very quick glance at some of the most obvious mistakes or failures on the part of the Secret Service. We covered the driver of the limo and how instead of hitting the gas, he hit the brakes. We covered the passenger, which also a Secret Service agent who was supposed to jump on top of the president after the first shot, never moved for 6, 7, 8 seconds. And then we talked about the follow-up car and how 8 Secret Service agents froze. I'm sorry, 7 of them froze. There were 8 total in or on the car. Only one responded. It was Clint Hill, who reacted to the shooting by running, getting off the running board and running to the limo, catching it, and trying to assist his charge, which was Jackie. And otherwise, if you count up all of the Secret Service agents in the first 2 cars with responsibilities for who was in that lead car, Jackie or the president, 10 agents, only one of those 10 responded in any way, shape, form like they were supposed to. And then we juxtapose that with what happened with Rufus Youngblood 3 cars back with the LBJ and how he did jump over the seat and get on top of the vice president and protect him, told everybody to get down. So it was a real line of demarcation between the Secret Service and how it protected the president versus how it protected the vice president. Today in episode 6, we're going to continue with that question. Did the Secret Service just have a bad day? This is part 2. And we're going to examine some of the other obvious flaws in the Secret Service protection. Now, remember, they knew because of what happened 20 days early in Chicago that there was a plot on the president's life, and it involved shooting him while he was in a motorcade. So here we are, less than 3 weeks later, after the Chicago situation, and here we are in Dallas, and instead of protecting him more, they protected him less. One of the requirements, the reason I brought up L. Fletcher Prouty earlier about the elite guard is because in his position as liaison between the military and the CIA and all the covert ops, he had a unique part of his job description, which was to arrange for military intelligence groups to follow the president around, assist the Secret Service when he spoke at or attended events around the country. The Secret Service usually stays with the president. They just don't have the manpower to fan out on the streets and watch the people on the sidewalks and in the buildings and the windows high above and all those things. And so they bring in typically a military intelligence group. In this case, it would have been the 112th down in Texas to assist, and their job is to be a presence on the ground. The Secret Service is in the motorcade itself. The 112th would be a presence on the ground. In the days leading up to the motorcade, Fletcher Prouty was called in by his superior officer and told that he was going on vacation. And this is not the only person who had a pivotal part to play in the Dallas motorcade who was sent on vacation for the purposes of getting them out of the way. And so he ends up out of the country during this Dallas motorcade. Of course, wakes up one morning to the news the president has been shot and immediately wonders if someone else, whoever his stand-in was, had gotten the 112th Military Intelligence Group to be on the ground that day. And if so, what had gone wrong? When he got back to Washington, he discovered that not only were they not there, they had been ordered to stand down. In other words, they were prepared to go, but somebody acting on behalf of the military told the military intelligence group to stand down. So here we see another case where the president is exposed and he doesn't even know it. Protection that is almost customary. It is customary was stripped away. Another protection that was stripped away involves the bubble top. Now, the bubble top is not bulletproof. It is bullet resistant, but you know the difference. It may have saved his life, obviously, but it was removed. And Jackie, it was against the wishes of Jackie. Jackie actually requested bubble top be left on. Though it was sunny and 70 degrees, it had rained almost all night before, and there were puddles in the street. She had her little pink suit on. She was afraid she'd be splashed. Nonetheless, against her wishes, the bubble top was removed. And it was removed by Samuel Kinney, who admitted that he removed it. He was ordered to remove it. And thus, any protection against, if it's a direct hit, that bullet would probably go direct. If it was a straight shot, probably go right through that bubble top. But because of the contours of the bubble top, it being rounded and bullet resistant glass, if it was a glancing blower off target just a little, it would just glance off of it, probably crack it or shatter it, but it would save the president's life. But of course, it wasn't there. And afterwards, the Secret Service says, well, Jack Kennedy didn't like it, and so we took it off per his request. No one ever witnessed or heard Jack Kennedy request that bubble top be removed. But of course, he was dead, so he couldn't defend himself. Another security measure that was clearly missing in Dallas were the police motorcycles. Now you say, well, I see police motorcycles in the motorcade, but contrast that with other motorcades that JFK was involved in. It was standard operating procedures that motorcades routinely had 12 motorcycle officers. As you can see in Dublin, Ireland, they've got 3 out front. They've got 4 next to the car, and they got several in the back. Anyway, it's 12 total. Actually, it looks like 6 around the car and 3 more behind it. So you've got a lot of protection around the president in the form of these motorcycles. In Dallas, they moved all the motorcycles behind the car, and not all of them. They stripped away 8 of them. They only left 4, and none of them were allowed to ride flank or in front, which, of course, the first shot came from the front, and the fatal shot came from the front and the side. So it exposed the president clearly to a front shot, to a side shot, both of which happened. And this is interesting. Again, when asked about this afterwards, the Secret Services again blamed Jack. They said Jack didn't like the sound of the motorcycles. It was too loud. He wanted to be able to yell at people, and hear the people. So he requested that these motorcycles be left out of the motorcade. And again, no witness, no one ever heard Jack Kennedy make any such request. So again, he's dead, so he can't explain that. But the Secret Service laid it at his feet. The reason the bubble top was removed and the reason the motorcycles were removed. So you can see how exposed he is as he's riding to the streets of Dallas. And you can see how close the crowd is. Another violation of Secret Service protocols involves the route itself. The route is supposed to avoid tall office buildings or high-rise buildings that have the possibility of open windows or balconies or anything where somebody could take a pot shot at the president from above. And it's a security impossibility to go through all those buildings in advance and then have them secure as you pass. It's a logistical nightmare. And so they just avoid it. But not in Dallas. In Dallas and in Chicago, it was scheduled to go through high-rise buildings in Chicago. Of course, that trip was canceled, but in Dallas, it wasn't canceled. And here they go right through all these high-rise buildings with open windows. And remember now, all the Secret Service agents are in the cars. There are no Secret Service agents on the sidewalks or in these buildings. And since they've told the 112th to stand down, that would normally be their job. If they see a window open, somebody would go up and find out why that window is open. If they saw somebody on a balcony, they would go up and find out what's going on that balcony. That's what the 112's job was, to to keep up with the motorcade and secure it block by block as the motorcade proceeds and protect the president from any threat from above. Now, obviously, this 112th not being there is no protection from above, and the route, which was changed at the last moment, goes right through the heart of the downtown, through and amongst all these tall, high-rise office buildings. The other thing about the motorcade route, I told you it was changed. The original route, if you look at the top picture, where that big bus is, that metro-looking bus, the route was supposed to come out there and then continue straight. It was not supposed to turn onto Houston, that 90-degree turn onto Houston, and that eventual 120-degree turn onto Elm. None of those turns were supposed to be there. It was supposed to go straight and pick up the interstate from the Stemmons Freeway. Those roads all end in the same place anyway. But the idea was if you go straight, you can keep the motorcade up to speed. The speed is key here. According to Secret Service protocols, a motorcade is never supposed to go below 20 miles an hour. It's supposed to stay between 20 and 30 miles an hour. If you go straight through there, of course, they're not stopping for stop signs or lights, then you can continue at a 20, 25, 30 mile an hour pace. And of course, you're not in taking those dog leg turns there, which puts you right in there in a perfect target rich environment. You go straight at 30 miles an hour and hit the interstate, you're off and gone. But the last minute, the mayor, and we've already discussed who the mayor is in an earlier episode, together with the Secret Service, changed the route. And they added this 90-degree turn onto Houston, which then approaches Elm, and you can see it doubles back. And it's actually a 120-degree turn onto Elm, and that's where the nightmare on Elm Street literally began. The limo, according to estimates, was traveling 11 miles an hour when the shooting started. And again, we learned yesterday that it then stopped. And then for the next 6 or 7 seconds, it was basically stopped on Elm Street. And we'll learn in later episodes where these shots were coming from. And it was literally a sitting duck for those shooters. So not supposed to have 90-degree turns at all. And instead, they have not only one, they have two. And not supposed to drop below 20 miles an hour. Not only did they drop below 20 miles an hour to make those two turns, it came to a stop. So those are some just obvious ones. And of course, when we get to the 5 conspirators, of which the Secret Service is one, I have a lot more details that came out after the fact, once the documents and the testimony comes out, and we find out just how exposed the president was and how this was premeditated. Okay, this wasn't spur of the moment, fly by night, making a decision by the seat of your pants kind of stuff. This was all premeditated, and it was leading to a conclusion. Another interesting thing about the Secret Service and its role in the assassination is the discovery of people that turned out to be posers or posing as Secret Service agents on the ground. At the time, nobody knew that. At the time when these credentials were flashed, the people that were approaching them took the credentials, and gave them credibility and released these people. It wasn't until later when Secret Service's roster was revealed that all of the Secret Service agents were in the motorcade itself, that people started to ask the question, who are these people posing as Secret Service agents? It starts with Bobby Hargis. As you can see, he is a motorcycle policeman, and he is riding to the left rear of the president's motorcade. Now, they are just, at this moment, they are just passing the grassy knoll. You can see the president is slumping in his seat. He has already been hit. This guy's name is Bobby Hargis, and he testified that the fatal shot was fired from the area of the grassy knoll. Now, I don't know, a lot of people say this, and they don't have it's second hand or accounts, or it's hearsay, or it looks like it was based on what I can see in the head of the president, how it reacts to the bullet. It looks like it was shot from the grassy knoll. Bobby Hargis is about as definitive and authoritative of a witness as you can get. Look where he is. he's looking right up at the grassy knoll, and he sees what happens to the president's head. And of course, we find out later he has brain matter from the president all over the windshield of his motorcycle and on the visor of his helmet. So clearly the shot is coming in his direction if the brain matter ends up all over him. Anyway, he testified that the fatal shot was fired from the area of the grassy knoll, after which he said, quote, "I got off my motorcycle and I ran to the right side of the street behind the light pole toward the knoll." Joe Marshall Smith, another Dallas police officer, testified that, quote, "This woman came up to me and she was just in hysterics. She told me, quote, 'They are shooting the president from the bushes.' I immediately proceeded up there toward the knoll." One of the motorcycle cops actually drove his motorcycle halfway up the knoll and laid it in the grass. And so here you have two motorcycle cops, or two police officers, one of them's on motorcycle, running up the grassy knoll, trying to get behind that picket fence because they both believe, and that woman who testified, who ran up to the police officer, believes that that's where the shooting's coming from. Well, Joe Marshall Smith said as they began searching behind the picket fence, a suspicious man emerged. Smith testified, quote, "I pulled my pistol from my holster, at which point the suspect pulled out of his pocket Secret Service credentials, and Smith let him go. And he regretted it later. He said something didn't feel right about it, but we were in such a hurry. The guy had Secret Service credentials and he was dressed like a Secret Service officer or agent. At the same time, of course, now realize none of this is known to everybody at the time. This is putting the pieces together later. At the Texas School Book Depository, where almost immediately everybody says that's where the shooting came from, and not everybody. This is Dallas police and a few others. Right after the shooting, two men were observed hastily leaving out the back door of the Texas School Book Depository. They too were confronted, and when they were confronted, they also produced Secret Service credentials, at which point they were released. So we now have three people from clearly the two places where witnesses say the shooting came from. I mean, we've established three witnesses already, two of whom are cops, saying the shooting came from the behind the picket fence on the grassy knoll. And they confronted a man who had Secret Service credentials, who's slinking along behind that fence. And then others who say, well, I think we heard shots from Texas School Book Depository. Two men are confronted leaving hastily out the back door of the Texas School Book Depository, and they too have Secret Service credentials. Now, in that moment, nobody suspected anything. Sergeant D.V. Harkness testified that when he first arrived at the rear of the Texas School Book Depository, there were some Secret Service agents there. I didn't get them identified. They told me they were Secret Service agents. So here we have another Dallas police officer who lets these two individuals go that had just fled the scene of the Texas School Book Depository. When this became a problem is later when the Secret Service's roster is, the document is revealed, and it shows that there were no Secret Service agents on foot in Dealey Plaza, and that all the Secret Service agents were part of the motorcade. So now the question is, who are these people pretending to be Secret Service, and why are they pretending to be Secret Service? Where did they get these credentials, for example? And that knowledge didn't come to be known until later, when one of the investigations revealed that the CIA, the Technical Services Division of the CIA, actually printed all the Secret Service credentials in 1963. So we immediately have a connection here. We have a problem with people posing as Secret Service agents. We have a lot of problems with the Secret Service itself, the people in the motorcade. Okay, we've already established that. We have a problem with people pretending to be Secret Service agents and flashing credentials. And then we have a problem because we find out that these credentials are being produced by the CIA, and one would assume that these are extremely hard to get your hands on. You don't just walk into Army surplus store and buy these things. Somebody on the inside had access to these. Who had access to these, and how did these, whatever they are, these men, get them in their possessions? And so those are some pretty interesting questions that come out in the days and months after the assassination. Additionally, we find out that, remember, to be on the White House detail, you have to work a long time and you have to be good, and you get promoted. It takes a long time to climb the ladder to get to be the White House detail. That is the plum assignment if you're a Secret Service agent. There are Secret Service agents scattered all over across the country in offices, and they handle things, local dignitaries, and they look out for counterfeiters, and they work hand in glove with the Secret Service in Washington. They're all part of the nationwide network. But to be on the actual White House detail, it takes years to get to the point where you get promoted to that position. 11 of the most experienced members of the White House detail had been transferred at their own request to other assignments within 60 days of the assassination. What this means is 2 months before the assassination. This is why I say a lot of this was all premeditated. This was planned meticulously in advance. There were 11 members of the White House detail that, according to the documents, the Secret Service internal, human resources, they requested other assignments. In other words, they asked off of the White House detail, which is unheard of, unless you have some sort of health issue or a family issue. Once you get on the White House detail, you try to stay. But in the 2 months, and this time factor is extraordinary. The more I study this, the more I realize there are no such thing as coincidences. But here we have a gigantic coincidence. 60 days within the assassination, 2 months before the Dallas trip, most of the Secret Service White House detail transfers out. And of course, they're replaced by less experienced agents. These are not people that got promoted to their job. These are people that basically were fill-ins. As we learned yesterday, the driver was a fill-in, right? The regular driver, and we'll tell this story later, but the regular driver died in October under very suspicious circumstances. And so he was replaced by William Greer. And of course, William Greer hit the brakes and basically pulled the whole motorcade to a stop for 6, 7, 8 seconds until the president was dead, and then he took off. The regular driver had been quoted by his family many times as saying, it was like this was his job. That's all he did was drive the president around. And he had been quoted many times and his family recounted this, how if anything ever happens in my motorcade while I'm driving, I'm going to get out of Dodge. And obviously, William Greer did not do that, but he wasn't the only replacement. Roy Kellerman, the agent in the front right seat, the passenger, he was also an emergency fill-in for an absentee agent. Gerald Benn was supposed to be in that seat. Gerald Benn had been with the Secret Service for decades, had never taken a vacation. In the lead up to the Dallas trip, he was informed by his boss that he was going to go on vacation. And Gerald Benn said, I don't want a vacation. I didn't ask for vacation. And his boss says, too bad, you're going on vacation. And when he was asked later, after the assassination, why did you request a vacation? He goes, I didn't. I was told to be on vacation. I didn't have any choice. They said, well, what did you do on vacation? He says, I just stayed at home and mowed my grass. This man had never been on a vacation, didn't know what to do on a vacation, didn't ask for the vacation, but he was assigned a vacation. So what you see here is the regular White House detail is being completely replaced in the days and weeks and months prior to the Dallas trip, and being replaced by inexperienced agents, being replaced by a fill-in as a driver, being replaced as the fill-in for the passenger seat. All of these important White House detail positions are turning over. And here they're going. We've already talked about in a previous episode how dangerous Dallas was for the president. And we've already talked about how 20 days prior, the Chicago trip had to be canceled because of a threat against his life in a motorcade. All of this is happening simultaneously. This is not a coincidence, okay? And what they're doing is they're laying the groundwork. As Prouty said, The elite guard will protect the president as long as it agrees with the president. And as long as there is an elite guard, the president is protected. If the elite guard chooses not to protect the president is killed. And that is exactly what is happening. The elite guard is laying down on the job. And the way they're laying down on the job is by replacing people who won't go along with the plan with people who will go along with the plan. An additional factor was what happened the night before. We're going to find out later through the testimony of Abraham Bolden. This is not the only time this kind of thing happens, but obviously this is an important one. 6 Secret Service agent men. This is, according to Drew Pearson, in the San Francisco Chronicle, wrote an article on December 1st, 1963. So this is about a week after the assassination. Drew Pearson has already learned that 6 Secret Service men who were charged with protecting the president. Remember, these are all the rookies. These are all the new guys. They were in the Fort Worth Press Club the early morning of Friday, November 22nd. Some of them remaining until 3 o'clock in the morning. They were drinking. And when they departed, they were reported en route to an all-night beatnik rendezvous, the Cellar. What happened was they were out boozing and womanizing, having a big time, partying basically at the Fort Worth Press Club. And the Fort Worth Press Club closed. They closed it down. So they looked around, they found another place that was open all night, and they went there to the Cellar. And based on that article, a later investigation showed it wasn't just 6 Secret Service agent men, it was 9. 9 agents at the press club and 10 agents at the Cellar. Now, we've already learned that there were 2 in the limo, there were 8 in the car. That's 10 right there. And we know that Rufus Youngblood was in the car with LBJ. That's 11. All right, look at these numbers. 9 agents at the press club drunk, drinking and out late, and 10 agents at the Cellar, which means they weren't back to the hotel preparing to do the motorcade, preparing to do their job until early the next morning. They got no sleep. They were drinking all night and they got no sleep. Furthermore, an investigation revealed that not only did they, participate in extremely unprofessional behavior at best, but some of them lost their credentials while they were there, and say they lost their sidearms while they were there. I mean, this is scandalous information here. And in 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations included in its report an admonition or basically a censorship of the Secret Service, where they revealed all of this information that we've just discussed, and concluded that, quote, the Secret Service was deficient in the performance of its duties. And then it stipulated a few points. Specifically, the Secret Service possessed information that was not properly analyzed, investigated, or used in connection with the president's trip to Dallas. This has to do with what happened in Chicago. Furthermore, Secret Service agents in the motorcade were inadequately prepared to protect the president from a sniper, clearly. And some of that is by its own doing, by not allowing the 112th Military Intelligence Group to do its job. And then thirdly, no actions were taken by the agent in the right front seat of the presidential limo to cover the president, which is obvious. You see, they left out William Greer in his failure to get out of town as the driver of the limo. They didn't make any special mention of him, which they should have. But anyway, this is an indictment of the Secret Service, and of course they sort of owned up to it as a series of mistakes, but very few people really pursued the angle that perhaps the Secret Service did all this intentionally. Perhaps this was not accidental. This was not a series of mistakes. This was actually thought out well in advance, and it went exactly to plan. Anyway, we'll talk more about that when we get to the Secret Service part of the conspirators. But there's just a few details to answer the question that I always get asked every time we are in the middle of this discussion. Somebody always asks me, whether it's a student or otherwise, well, maybe the Secret Service just had a bad day. I mean, not everybody's perfect all along. We found out that for 62 years they did a bang up job, and then they just had a bad day in Dallas, and And then, they've been good ever since. There's even a Hollywood movie called In the Line of Fire. Clint Eastwood plays the part of a Secret Service agent, a veteran who had been in Dallas and was tormented by what happened in Dallas, couldn't ever forget it. And they kind of, uh, that's kind of how it's presented by Hollywood as well. The Secret Service has had a very unlucky, bad day, and it just so happened to be for a very important person, President Kennedy, and in a situation that happened in broad daylight that the whole free world saw. And so, once you make a mistake of that proportion, you can never live it down. I submit that it's possible, in fact, likely, that this was not a bad day, that this was a good day if you were part of the planning of this Dallas trip, that it went according to plan, that everything you did worked according to plan. And it's even a better plan because virtually no one has suspected that the Secret Service played any role in the JFK assassination other than by mistake. But they've largely been let off the hook. So you would have to say or conclude that those who planned this would say, no, it wasn't a bad day. It was a very good day. Anyway, that's episode 6. Be back later. I thank you for watching. Again, if you like what you're seeing and hearing, feel free to subscribe. It's free. Also, feel free to hit the bell, the notification bell, and thumbs up button. Appreciate all your support. Thank you. I'll be back with episode 7 later this week. Thank you.